Well, good evening. You're very welcome to the last tackle here on the Sportsman Rugby League. We've just about got our breaths back after an incredible weekend in the Betfred Challenge Cup, and alongside me this afternoon to talk through it all, dissect everything we saw and look ahead, of course, to another round in the Betfred Super League, Kevin Brown and Eddie Hemmings. Kev, I bumped into you on the sidelines after that Hull KR win on Sunday. What a weekend. 4 games across the men's and the women's, a combined winning margin of just 16 points. How good?
Well, yeah, brilliant. The best I've seen. I can't remember a semi-final weekend being, so full of drama, so full of, we didn't know the ending until the last minutes in all of them. Even the Wigan Leeds, the women's game, I thought Wigan were unbelievable in that game too. They were big underdogs, but pushed Leeds all the way. But some of the skill at the end, the drop goals and the heartache, the tackles, there was some high tackles, some low tackles, but it had everything. It was just so enjoyable. And for the neutrals, it was brilliant. But for the LEIGH fans and the Hull KR fans especially, they're heading down to Wembley with excitement.
Yeah, if you had a rugby league bingo card, you'd have had a full house fairly early on in the weekend. Eddie, when the chips are down and there's jeopardy and there's so much to play for, the atmospheres are incredible. There's nothing better, is there? The sport just produces and produces and produces.
Absolutely it does, and I think, frankly, it has done for years. And the word that I would describe the weekend and the fact that we've got 2 new names, or 2 relatively unknown names in a final, is refreshing. How refreshing is it to see 2 different clubs battling it out for one of the biggest prizes in the game? I mean, let's hope that it's a full house at Wembley, because they've got 3 finals on the day, on August the 12th. Let's hope everybody travels down there. I'm sure LEIGH will be empty. Half of Hull will be empty. Maybe the other half of Hull will go and support LEIGH. You never know. But I hope that this will now carry through to the Super League and the Grand Final, because if you look back over the history of the Grand Final, we've had 4 winners since 1996. Just 4 winners: Wigan, Saints, Leeds and Bradford. How wonderful it would be to see another new name on the trophy after the Grand Final in October.
There has been some controversy off the back of the weekend, Kev. We'll touch on that in a bit. But when I left Leeds on Sunday night, and the kind of overriding kind of theme and emotion that I spoke to everyone was just excitement and optimism, because that it just felt like this weekend has lit the blue touch paper. The season's been incredible anyway, but it's just, there's almost a sense of euphoria around the game of what we're getting served up at the moment.
It was just an absolute spectacle, and like Eddie says, that refreshing nature of having new clubs there, I think the appreciation by their fans was much more. They've not been spoiled like the Wigan fans and the Saints fans have. That you could see the passion. They were crying. There were people crying all over the ground, that happy, and that's how much it means. And it is. I think it's a change of the guard. I think, we've had a season of people beating everyone, not knowing who's going to win the games, and I think it is, developing into the salary cap sport that we wanted. And now one of them teams are going to go and have that huge success story on the back of it. I'm not sure who that is, Lewis. I think it'd be very close, but yeah, I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, we'll get some predictions shortly, but August the 12th is the day. That is the day in the sun under the arch at Wembley. We've got 3 finals: the women's Betfred Challenge Cup final, the men's Betfred Challenge Cup final, and the 1895 Cup final as well. History will be made, the first time ever that the women's final is being played at Wembley, and one person who's been waiting for this moment for a very long time, St Helens and England captain Jodie Cunningham. Jodie, you going to Wembley? Sum up that feeling.
I don't think I can. I don't think I can sum up that feeling. It was such a tough game. It went end to end. It was hard, and York really brung it, but these girls deserve it. They work so hard, they give so much, and I just can't believe we're in Wembley.
It was pretty much set for set in the end. York pushed you all the way. When Faye put that drop goal over, could you quite believe how tight it was?
Oh, I love Faye Gaskin. I'm telling you that calmness to be able to slot that over under that pressure, outstanding. I'm definitely buying her a pint tonight.
You're going to be bearing a few scars from this one, I think, by the look of it. Worth it?
Oh, 100% worth it. The battle scars are all worth it. Emily Rudge, absolute warrior. I think she was outstanding today, toughed it up, and yeah, worth every single bit of blood.
When will it sink in that you're going to be part of the first ever Women's Challenge Cup final?
Well, I'm not too sure. It's going to take a while. It really is going to take a while, but we're going to enjoy today. We're going to support the lads and hopefully 2 Saints teams at Wembley.
Congratulations, mate.
Nice one, thank you.
Nice. Yeah, it feels like a big moment for the game. The women's final taking place at Wembley alongside the men's. And Eddie, when you look at that day, 3 finals for the price of 1. You're not going to find much better value in a sporting ticket anywhere, are you?
Not at all. Great value for money, isn't it? And as I said before, let's hope that the place is absolutely jam full for it. Jodie Cunningham, you know, wonderful for her, wonderful for St Helens. Faye Gaskin, what a story this is. 2 years ago, she was told she probably wouldn't play the game again. She drops the goal that takes St Helens to Wembley. She's playing at Wembley. You know, it's a story that you just could not make up. Absolutely fantastic, really is. And as you say, that game at Wembley, then the men's game, then the 1895 Cup Final. Wow, value for money, that's what rugby league's all about. Why would you spend 260 odd million pounds on Kylian Mbappe? Why wouldn't you come and spend a few bob on rugby league? You know, you get value for money with us.
There you go. There's the pitch. Kev, we were just, that drop goal that Eddie's just mentioned, Faye Gaskin, we were talking about it before we came on air. In that kind of, the pressure, but it was a slow play of the ball. She had the defence right up on it. That's some kick for the distance as well.
At the end of the game, and yeah, full credit to Faye. I spoke to her on Sunday, and her story's brilliant. Like Eddie says, she was nearly walking away from the game. She actually needs a knee replacement, and they told her, you know, you should probably think about retiring, but she's passionate about the game that much. They're not being paid millions or anything. She's doing it for the love of the game, and to come up with that clutch moment at the end is just remarkable. And you could see the happiness on her face. It was almost, you know, a massive relief and an outpouring of emotion because she's been through the mill, and it's took her time to get to it. I think where the women's game has come from and got to almost overnight, it's a massive success story for the game.
Yeah, it really felt like that last-minute drop goal in that first semi-final of the weekend just set the tone, didn't it, for the full weekend. Went on to that, from that, LEIGH Leopards beating St Helens in a game that will go down in history for a lot of reasons. Played at a remarkable pace. We'll pick the bones out of that shortly, but I just want to kind of get the reaction of the man responsible for this incredible LEIGH Leopard story. On the pitch, after the game, in front of the LEIGH fans, Derek Beaumont. What will the emotion be like when you get to Wembley?
Oh, mate, I'm just going to savour it. You know, big respect to St Helens as well. I want to say that, you know, we worked closely with Mike Rush before it so that we had everything in place between us, and whichever team got there then took on the hotel and everything else. So, you know, we're really good close friends as clubs. You know, respect to Eamon McManus who owns that, and all their players. You know, they're a fantastic side. They won the World Club Challenge and they deserve a lot of respect for that. But I just think it shows how far we've come and how good we are and how much our boys wanted it. You know, they was really, really up to defend that out at the end. So hugely proud. When I go to Wembley, I am gonna, well, you'll see what I'll be looking like. It won't be that jacket.
Just to fill London now with loads of leopard spots as the next task, isn't it?
I reckon there'll be plenty of them. You know, there's not going to be many people left in Leigh that day, and I'm a guy who tries to be charitable. Our council is as well. We work together on things like that. So we're going to look at trying to put some transport on for people that otherwise wouldn't be able to go and things like that. So it's a big 3 weeks now. A lot of stuff's already been done. In case we got here, I believed we could, and you'll see the evidence in that. It would have been a few quid down the drain if we didn't, but it's worked out for me.
Well, Derek, congratulations.
Thank you. Cheers, Max. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Derek Beaumont taking the plaudits after that win, and you have to give full credit to him, but you have to give more credit to his team, Kev, because that was 80 minutes of rugby league played at a ridiculous intensity, and I just kept thinking St Helens will do, this is what St Helens do, they'll stick at this pace and Leigh will fade, but they didn't.
Well, for 80 minutes it was tough, but for 40 minutes it was almost impossible for Leigh. I thought Saints probably were 12 to 18 points better in that first half. But the resilience and character that Leigh showed just to stay in the fight. I think just before half time they kicked a goal, didn't they? And you know, I thought Reynolds was brilliant. I thought he's probably one of the most improved. We speak about Lachlan Lamb and Asiata, but it's people who they've rejuvenated the careers. Josh Charlie, Ben Reynolds, they just seem to have galvanised together, and it looks like a bunch that want to play for each other and play for the coach. And what Adrian Lamb's done there, you know, he's sprinkled a bit of talent in there, but underneath it all, the core is hard work and character and desire, which they needed in bucket loads, especially in the first half.
The Adrian Lamb story is a remarkable one, really, Eddie, because he was Coach of the Year at Wigan when they missed out in grand final in that remarkable fashion to Saints. It all went a bit south for him after that. We weren't really sure where we were going to see him next. He's come to Leigh, and the kind of resurgence in him, and when you speak to him now and you see how much he seems to be enjoying coaching again, I was happy for him more than anything. Fantastic
for him, it really is. You're right, and he proved at Wigan he's got an eye for a player, because I think I'm right in saying he was the man who brought Jay Field to Wigan. And of course, Jay Field missed the entire season just about with injury. So you just wonder what would have happened had he been playing for Adrian Lamb. But you're right, Adrian Lamb, Chris Chester, I think, needs a lot of credit as well. Who was, you know, maybe the influence behind the head man. But he's got his son playing out of his skin. He's coached Lachlan Lamb since he was 6. He knows what he's going to get out of him. Ben Reynolds, as you say, Asiata. Ipapi is one of the finest hookers in the competition at the moment, and they have got something going for them. I mean, the first Wembley since 1971, when Alex Murphy's team famously won it. The last time that they were at Wembley was then. The first semi-final in 30 years. The last time they won a trophy of any real significance was the championship in the 80s. I mean, this is an incredible, incredible story. Derek has put his money where his mouth is, and he's got a team that has taken him to Wembley. They're sitting second in the Super League. The fans on the TV this week, when the tickets went on sale, have been talking about the treble. They're talking about the League Leaders' Shield. They're talking about the Challenge Cup. And they're talking about the grand final success. And you wouldn't put it past them.
Well, that's it. It's a genuine possibility. We're
Absolutely.
19 rounds in, so
absolutely,
you would laugh them out the stadium at round 1, but not now. They are the real deal.
They are. And I've been saying for much of the season, if they get to us, since they got to the semi-final, if they get to Wembley, will Derek put them in the leopard suits? Will he kit them all out in a leopard suit like his own? Well, I texted him to congratulate him on his win, and he sent me one back. No, I'm not doing that, he says, but what he's doing, he's getting some bespoke made tracksuits, leopard skin tracksuits that the boys are going to walk to the stadium in, because they're staying in a hotel not too far away from the ground, with leopard skin trainers as well. But he said, wait to see, just wait and see what I'm going to be wearing. And I can imagine what he's going to live every minute of that day, and good on him. Good on him. It's a breath of fresh air this year. It really is.
I think anyone selling any kind of leopard printed merchandise clothing in the kind of Greater Wigan area is going to have a good few weeks. Just before we move on to talk about Sunday's games, because another remarkable semi-final, a lot of talk this week about the tackles, the disciplinary process that have led to a couple of season-ending injuries for St Helens. Alex Warmers leading Nations Parsi, both out for prolonged periods. There's been all sorts of talk about this on social media. Paul Whelan's very vocal about it, Kev, in his post-match press conference. As a former player, somebody put the body on the line sometimes. What's your perspective on it?
It's a very, very difficult one, because with the letter of the law, I think he's not done anything wrong, but common sense states, and it's clear that is not a look that we want. And there's two fantastic players missing the rest of the year. That is not something we want. So we have to look at that tackle, not just for the players being tackled, but John Asiata, in my opinion, is lucky not to have broke his neck, had a concussion, because he was throwing himself. Look, it was last ditch, and he threw everything into it, and ultimately he's got his team to the final, and it was a captain's knock. It wasn't illegal, and everyone who I've spoken to have had an argument with me, but he's tackled on his own, the front, and he's hit the knees. It's not illegal. I think we need to look at that tackle, because it's almost a cannonball. We see it in NFL. They have helmets on and pads, and they dive at the knees. We don't want that. I can see where Wello's coming from, but the Rugby League's in a very difficult situation because black and white, I don't think it's against the rules.
I think the thing for me, and obviously, you know, we hope that Alex and Ignatius Barsi get themselves back up and running as quickly as possible. No one wants to see long-term injuries. The thing that struck me about this whole thing, and it has done a few times this season, is who'd be a referee? And when you've got decisions like this to make and the disciplinary process, it's so difficult to get this right, isn't it, Eddie?
Well, it is, but it is a matter of opinion on the field. And for the big moments, not necessarily the tackles like we've seen from John Asiata over these 4 incidents that Paul Wellens is really, really upset about. A lot of them go to the video referee. This didn't go to the video referee. What Paul is concerned about, I think, is the fact that when Mike Cooper suffered a similar injury with a Morgan Knowles tackle, the disciplinary committee looked at all the evidence and looked at the tapes in greater detail than he believes they have taken into account on this occasion. And he is more concerned about the governing body's failure to protect his and other players. He's questioned the match review panel for viewing the incidents in a different light to the one I've just mentioned. And he stated that in his view, Asiata's tackle technique is reckless and dangerous. And he even says now that Alex Walmsley is actually thinking about his future in the game, whether he wants to carry on playing when he recovers from all of this. So obviously it's raw, the emotion at St Helens. He takes nothing away, by the way, from the fact that they were beaten in the semi-final. And he wishes Leigh all the very best at Wembley. He is more concerned, and he says this will put thousands of people off playing the game across the country. He said his 8-year-old son plays amateur rugby league for Pilkington Rex. And he says if this is allowed to carry on, this sort of tackle is allowed to carry on in the game, even Paul Wellens is questioning whether he's going to pull his son out of Pilkington Rex. He's obviously really, really distressed about all of this. And you can have opinions on either side of the coin, can't you? You know, frankly, I didn't see the tackles as you would have seen them. You know, I'm watching as a casual observer at home on the TV. When you look back at them, I suppose, and this is where his problem is. His problem is, Paul Wellens, is that the governing body, the disciplinary committee, haven't looked at it in the same light as they looked at the Morgan Knowles.
Well, I think with the Morgan Knowles one, there was clear. It was a tackle that you're not allowed to do, so there was a clear illegal tackle made. And then the injury off the back of it, he got punished for that. I think what they've said with Asiata is, it don't look great, but that is not an illegal tackle, so we can't just punish someone because they've got injured. I think it's a real dangerous way to go off the back of people getting injured and banning people. We've got to do it in a much more complex way. A black and white, that's legal and that's not legal, regardless of injury. And if it is black and white and it's legal, then I think we've got to move on. But I agree, it's reckless, it's dangerous. We don't want it in the game. So I think there's a conversation about to happen about the laws moving forward.
I suspect we've not heard the end of this, which in a lot of ways is a shame because understandably it's dominated the narrative off the back of these semi-finals. I just want to pull it back onto the rugby side of things, so to speak, and talk about Hull KR. They've booked their place at Wembley, a remarkable game on Sunday. If Saturday wasn't good enough, what we got on Sunday was incredible. They've got a man on their staff, of course, who knows Wembley quite well. He's been there 1 or 2 times before. I caught up with him after the game, Danny Maguire.
Danny, you had to do it the hard way, but you've got to Wembley, some achievement.
Oh, unbelievable. The lads were outstanding, really deserved it. They worked so hard tonight, and fair play to Wigan. I thought they were really good as well. Circumstances, but our boys just found a way to do it, and lost my voice, as you can tell, from shouting and screaming, but they really deserve it. They worked hard this year, and we've got a few weeks to prepare now for a massive game in a cup final.
It felt like you had to win that game a few times, but you're making a habit, aren't you, of winning close games?
We just stuck in there, we just found a way to get it done, so lads deserve a lot of credit, mate. They work so hard for each other, and obviously the fans are unbelievable as well, and you know, they deserve a lot of credit as well, and yeah, we'll enjoy this, enjoy today, but back to the drawing board, back to the hard work on Monday.
You should mention the conditions as well. It wasn't just Wigan you were playing out.
Yeah, it was tough. It was almost like winter rugby really out there, and but they played the conditions well. Wigan scrapped and scraped and defended well, but like you say, last few weeks we've just found a way, so I've lost my voice, so I probably need to shut up.
You've had some special nights at this place. Where does this rank?
Yeah, no, this is good. In a different way. I'm really pleased for the lads, really. You see all the hard work and effort that they're putting in, to get that, they deserve it.
Well done, congratulations.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah, Hull KR going to Wembley the first time since 2015, of course. Kev, that was a remarkable performance because Wigan didn't give it them easy at all. Golden point, of course, that drop goal. That game just had everything, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It also had referees' decisions in that one, but I thought Wigan brought what Wigan do. They showed character when they went down to 12 men. But I think with what Willie Peters has done at that club, we mentioned how good things are at LEIGH. Well, he's doing the same. You know, they've had a great start to the season, had a few injuries, but then what a signing Brad Snyder's been over the last 2 weeks. On the very same pitch, in the same area, he drops 2 goals to win 2 games, and he's already a hero forever at Hull KR. He's got him to the cup final, but I thought the Mikey Lewis experiment, putting him to fullback, worked. I thought he was terrific there, letting Milnes and Snyder play together. So Hull KR, what a fantastic performance they put in, because Wigan was still good, even though they went down to 12, they were still very good.
Yeah, a brilliant game, and the let-off of emotion that we saw at the end just shows what it means. Eddie, you were the mouthpiece, the voice of Rugby League for so long. Give me the sales pitch for LEIGH Leopards versus Hull KR in the Betfred Challenge Cup final.
Well, I think it'll be a fantastic game, I really do. And I agree with Kevin. You know, Brad Snyder will be getting the freedom of the city of Kingston upon Hull, at least the red and white side of it from the east side. An incredible side. He's been here 3 weeks. And look what he's done. He's won the game at Leeds, and then he's gone back to Headingley, and he's won the semi-final on the same ground. Lightning really does strike twice. That game on the weekend, there was drama before the first whistle. Ryan Hall pulls out. You think, well, that's it. You know, that's one of their strike weapons gone. But the two of them, you're right, they showed grit, they showed determination. I mean, LEIGH weren't in it in the first half. They really weren't. Hull Kingston Rovers went toe-to-toe. Toe-to-toe with Wigan. They really did. I mean, you've always thought in both games, well, the big boys are going to come back and they're going to win this. But just fantastic drama. And I think, and I hope, that LEIGH and Hull will go to Wembley and play with a little, you know, we're here. Who would have ever thought we would get here? Let's go out and enjoy it. Let's play the game as it should be played. You know, I don't see 5 drives and a kick for 80 minutes. I think there'll be a bit of, you know, good stuff. I think there'll be a bit of ball movement. There's some great players on show. And whichever team comes out on top at Wembley, the story is complete. LEIGH, Hull Kingston Rovers. What would you have given us the start of the season for a LEIGH Hull Kingston Rovers Challenge Cup final?
Anything you want, Eddie.
There you go. You see? So there it is. And it will be, I think it'll be, as I said earlier, refreshing. I think it'll be a great game. And I just think that it's aligned for Derek Beaumont. I think the stars have aligned. I think Derek and LEIGH are going to make history. The one thing the Hull Kingston Rovers don't want to do is go like in 2015 and lose by 50 points to 0. And I don't think they will for 1 minute.
This remarkable season deserves remarkable finals. I think we're going to get 2. I certainly think that day at Wembley is going to be an unbelievable afternoon of Rugby League. That's in a few weeks' time. Before that, right here on the Sportsman, this Sunday, we've got a triple header. We're going down to Kent for more Betfred Wheelchair Super League action.
This is it. After the biggest and most inclusive Rugby League World Cup ever, it all comes down to this. Brace yourself.
England, great ball round the back, getting it out wide, and it's another fantastic England try. Can they execute? And it will, ducks underneath, bodies on the ground in the grand final. They could play the ball, flicks the ball away, and Hawkins will do the rest. That was sensational. The emotion comes pouring out. It had absolutely everything. What a game of rugby league.
Yeah, it's an early start in Medway on Sunday. Join us, that first kick-off, 10:30 in the morning for the Betfred Wheelchair Super League, and then we're with you all the way through the rest of the day. In the Betfred Men's Super League this week, it's time to turn our attention to a big, big week, a big, meaningful round. It's time to tackle the tough stuff.
Once again, Rugby League comes together
to tackle the tough stuff. We're here to share our stories.
Our experiences.
And our learnings.
To help our Rugby League family through the hard times.
Or prepare them for anything that may lay ahead.
Whether dealing with grief or loss.
Or facing the stresses of life.
Help is available.
The past 3 years have affected all of us.
With over 3 million people in the UK dependent on food banks.
And 1 in 4 people experiencing some form of mental health problem.
Now is the time to come together.
Equip ourselves with the tools and know-how.
And build a network of support.
A team isn't just players on the pitch.
It can be your friends, families or co-workers.
Learn how to open up and lean on your community.
Or notice when they themselves need a little extra support.
And together. Together.
Together.
Together, we can tackle the tough stuff.
Yeah, tackle the tough stuff around in the Betfred Super League this week. Rugby League Cares doing fantastic work across the sport and beyond. Good luck to everybody involved in that. And it kicks off Huddersfield Giants versus Hull FC. Kev, interesting one this, because I always think it's interesting when you come back into the Super League when most teams have had a week off. It almost kind of just refreshes the palate a little bit, and perhaps form books are less significant than they would have been if we'd have had a game last weekend.
Yeah, and both these sides, I think they've both won the last 2, so they're both trying to get up the table. Hull FC, still a slight chance of playoffs. Huddersfield, well, it's been a disaster up until the last couple of weeks. They're back on track, and Ian Watson will be desperate. I'm sure he's had them in over the break. He'll be desperate to carry on that form.
And then Friday night, Saints looking to bounce back from that Challenge Cup heartbreak. St Helens versus Wigan on a Friday night. Eddie, you'd have been in your element if you were still on Sky with this game, wouldn't you?
Yes. Saints Leeds, isn't it? No?
Saints Leeds, yeah. What did I say?
You said Wigan. Sorry.
Oh, well.
You threw me off the scent. Yeah, no, Saints Leeds.
That's why you do it and I don't, Eddie.
Well, it just made me think for a minute that I got it wrong, which I normally do. A massive test of character, this, for St Helens, I think. And Leeds still in with an outside shout of the top 6 as well. They'll bring their A game to the totally wicked. I'm slightly concerned for St Helens with these injuries that they've got as a result of the semi-final controversy we've already talked about. There's no Parsi, there's no Walmsley, Knowles is also a doubt, and Louis McCarthy-Scarsbrook as well. Massive holes for St Helens to fill.
Lussick's gone back.
Lussick's gone back to Australia. I don't think his replacement has arrived yet. So
I think he's arrived this morning, but whether he plays or not, obviously.
Listen, the Saints might do a Brad Schneider with him, throw him straight into the deep end, and he might
some
come
of the
up
young
with a try and
lads
a
as
drop
well,
goal.
Eddie. I'm sure they'll have some Lewis Dodds and Jack Wellesby.
Oh yes,
George
John
Delaney's
Bennison's
coming through. Yeah, they're a breeding ground.
I think, but look, that's obviously one of the headaches for Paul Wellens and Saints is just who do you put in these holes. But is there also an element of they need to just take the emotion of the last week out of it, kind of settle everything down again, because there'll be a lot of people hurting in that dressing room. There'll be a lot of frustration. Obviously, been a lot of media talk about the fallout. How much of Paul Wellens' job now is to just draw a line in the sand and say, this is the cards we've been dealt. Here we go.
Well, for the last 5 years, that's what they've done. They've let the talking happen on the field, and that's what they need to get back to. They're out of one cup, and I think they're sat 4th or 5th in the league. So it's important now that they do carry on that resurgence that they've had in the competition towards the back end of the season. But like Eddie says, I fancy Leeds in this one. I think there's so many people missing for Saints. They're up against it. And Leeds have already been there this year and won at Saints. So they'll have that confidence to draw from.
Also on Friday, Hull KR versus Castleford. Eddie, sometimes we'll be talking about the potential of a kind of hangover for Rovers, but they can't afford to do that because of the playoff picture. They've got to keep firing on both fronts.
They have, and again, Brad Schneider's name keeps coming up on this programme this week. He has said that they, not only are they going to go to Wembley and win, they are also hell-bent on getting into the top 6 and having a bash at the grand final also. Yes, I mean, I'm sure there's a bit of celebrating been done in East Hull.
They're sure just finishing now.
Yeah, they're probably just about coming in for training. But, the emotion of the whole thing, if Willie Peters can and Danny Maguire, they'll try and put that behind them. But it's a big ask for them. there will be a degree of exhaustion. There'll be, a little bit of fatigue that I'm sure will set in. Castleford, they've lost Faraimo and Fanua. They've both left the club with immediate effect. Castleford and Wakefield down at the bottom of the table, scrambling to get players in to avoid the drop, because it might be the last drop we ever have. They're not only fighting for their place in Super League next year, maybe for the Super League for the foreseeable future. So there's all sorts of emotions at Castleford. It's a tough one to call this, but I do think that Hull KR just might have the cup hangover. Not that they've been beaten, but the cup hangover going into that.
As Eddie alluded to, it is a big one for Cass. This players have gone out the door this week. I suspect that they may have some new signings announced imminently, maybe even before we go to air tonight. But they just need to keep putting distance between themselves and the bottom, don't they, at this stage? That's all it's about.
Yeah, they do. I actually think there'll be a different take on this game. I think it'll be a party at Craven Park. I think the KR fans will go nuts. I think Castleford will struggle, and I think Hull KR, what Willie Peters will probably do is go, look, let's aim for the games now, and then the week before, let's have a rest. I think they'll be really targeting these games to keep themselves in with a show, like Snyder says, of the top six. And I think the emotion, and they'll carry that on. They'll put the bottles of beer down and get the bottles of water and carry on. And I think they're a fantastic side, and I think they'll win this game.
Well, Saturday live on Channel 4, another one of our Challenge Cup finalists in action, and what a game for them. They're making a very, very short trip. It's the Battle of the Borough. Yeah, the Battle of the Borough, the Wigan Warriors against the LEIGH Leopards. Kev, this will be some atmosphere, I'd imagine.
It will, and a lot of people thought it might have been after the game on Saturday. They thought this game might have been the cup final, but Wigan are licking the wounds. They'll not be in the final, and Leigh will be rubbing it in. It's big brother, little brother, but little brother's got the gloves on this time. So, yeah, it's going to be a great game. It's very similar to the Hull KR one. What Leigh side will turn up? Will Leigh a party to add? Will Leigh celebrate too much? I think they're a professional group. I think Adrian Lamb's a very professional coach. I'm not sure they'll have enough to go to Wigan. Wigan are one of the worst clubs to play after disappointment. I know Matty Pete will be galvanising them together to come out firing.
Yeah, Wigan versus Saints is obviously the derby in that area, but Wigan versus Leigh, if we can get this up and running as a competitive fixture year on year, and Leigh have certainly held up their side of the bargain, and what an addition to the Super League this is.
Very much so, and we're all wondering whether Leigh can add to Wigan's woes. Can they, keep going this wonderful run that they've got now? I think they've lost just one against the Catalan Dragons in the last 13 games. They're at Wembley, they're cock-a-hoop, 12 wins. They've beaten Warrington, Leeds, St Helens Hall and Hull KR and Salford in that run. So they're no mugs, Leigh. They are no mugs. Again, the cup hangover after last weekend, I would imagine, again, huge celebrations at Leigh. It's almost a once in a lifetime for them and their supporters. 50 odd years since they were last at Wembley. Brilliant stuff. But they're second in the table. They're trying to keep tabs on the Catalan Dragons. Wigan, you're right. Matty Pete will be saying, hey, let's go and prove that actually we're not a bad side, that we should be at Wembley. This mob shouldn't be at Wembley. And he will be looking for a reaction from the Wigan Warriors. I'm sure he will.
Yeah, that one's going to be an absolute cracker on Saturday. Also on Saturday, Salford make the trip to the south of France. They take on the Catalan Dragons. Kev, for Salford, this is an interesting one. There's some negative transfer stories kind of floating around the club at the moment. A lot of talk about Tyler Dupree again. They've struggled form-wise coming into this, but they have got a good record against Catalans in recent years.
Yeah, and some sides have gone over to Catalans recently and won. So I think Salford will be quietly confident. I'm just worried about Salford. I think they've lost the last 4 and they just seems to have run out of a bit of energy. They look fatigued, and I think that's probably because the squad is so small. Paul Rowley is a great coach, but he's had to use the same troops over and over again, and they just look a little bit leggy. I think Catalans, they're obviously top of the table and they'll want to stay there, so I fancy Catalans in this.
And then rounding off the weekend, Wakefield versus Warrington, which has been an interesting fixture in recent years, Eddie. Wakefield have genuinely had the rub in this game. They need the rub in this one.
Very much so. How the Castleford-Hull KR game go will, maybe shape the way that this Wakefield-Warrington match progresses. Warrington have beaten Wakefield once already this season. Last year, they couldn't buy a win against Wakefield. They beat them twice in the Super League, and Wakefield knocked them out of the Challenge Cup as well. These are desperate times at the bottom of the table. They're also desperate times at Warrington because they're on an awful run of results. And if they are going to have any chance of getting to the grand final, which if they get into the top 6, that is their avowed intent, well, they've got to pick up points at places like Wakefield. They have to. But Wakefield now are desperate. Wakefield know the battle is joined between them and Castleford. Anything could happen. And don't forget, Castleford and Wakefield meet at Wakefield, what is it, the 18th of August? Not too far away. That could be, and that's live on Sky Sports, that could be the repeat of that £1 million game all those years ago when they had the biggest crowd for Super League at Wakefield and Castleford were beaten. When John Keir's Wakefield survived in Super League, Castleford went down.
And Wakey are the form side in these
They
two.
are.
They've won 2 of the last 3. I think of Warrington won 1 out of 8. It's horrific form
I think they've
going
lost the
over
last
there.
5, Warrington. 5 on the bounce.
Horrific form.
Yeah, that's a really interesting game. They all are, again. Gents, I could sit here all day and talk about this just incredible season we're having.
We've said this all year. This is the season that just keeps on giving, because we've talked about 6 games now for the weekend and we're all undecided about who's going to win. It's a flip of the coin, you're absolutely right.
It is remarkable. We have run out of time, unfortunately. So, gents, thank you for coming in. An amazing weekend in the Challenge Cup. I'm sure the Super League is going to live up to the billing as well. And don't forget, right here on the Sportsman, Sunday morning, 3 back-to-back games from the Betfred Wheelchair Super League, live and exclusive. And we'll see you next week, of course, right here on The Last Tackle.